because I'm usually a very nice, funny person in real life, but I was trying to be this person I wasn't. And so I broke up a fight in the hallway, and on a Friday. The child was one of them was one of mine. She got suspended. She came back to school, and the following Friday, she apparently pooped on the floor in front of my door. And they didn't have cameras, but I mean, I put two and two together, and the custodian and I put two and two together with who was around my building on that Friday. And so it was there until that Monday.
You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor Podcast, where we help music educators build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. I am your host, Elisa Jansen-Jones, and you can follow my music education blog at professionalmusiceducator.com, where, now that I'm not teaching full-time, I'll actually be able to create some awesome content for y'all. And speaking of y'all, I want to start this episode by saying thank you. Thank you so much for dedicating a bit of your precious time to listening to this podcast. May it edify you and give you some great practical ideas for implementing better classroom management into your own teaching repertoire. Classroom management. One of the great blessings and banes of our existence as music teachers. Just the other day, I was having a mentoring session with a first-year teacher, and I asked him how much training in classroom management he had been provided. What rules and procedures was he planning to implement? What consequences had he come up with for when the students break the rules? Yeah, this was stuff he really hadn't had covered in his formal education. He had some experience when he was student teaching in the middle school, but 95% of his new job would be with elementary students. I was able to give him some tips and tricks and demonstrate a couple of things and offer to be ready to help again when he has questions. But the fact of the matter is, we're being thrown into classrooms with a vast knowledge of music performance and pedagogy and rehearsal techniques, and very little about actually running a classroom. It kind of makes things challenging when you're faced with challenges that you aren't prepared to meet. That's why, for this episode, I convinced my friend Dale Duncan to come on and talk about some of the strategies he uses to navigate the world of managing his classroom. Dale recently gave an entire session on this topic for the International Music Education Summit, and I knew it was exactly the kind of thing we need to open up to everybody entering the music classroom this year. For us veteran teachers even, to improve our own classroom management. Like, what procedures do we need to have a plan for? Do we really need specific rules, or are guidelines okay? Should we use incentives like clip-up charts or parties? And when should we turn the discipline over to someone outside of our classroom, like another teacher or the administration? We cover all of that and more in this episode. Be sure to stay tuned until the end, because I've got an extra special bonus for you too. Remember, you can find all of the links to this episode, as well as the SoundCloud stream and any freebies, on the Smart Music blog. You know what else you can find at smartmusic.com/blog? Hundreds of helpful articles and free resources created by music teachers for music educators like you. Why not navigate over to smartmusic.com/blog the next time you open a browser window and discover the answers to your most pressing questions? Now, let's get to my conversation with Dale Duncan, who you may recognize more informally as Mr. D from In the Middle with Mr. D, who is also a 2018 Top 25 GRAMMY Music Educator Award finalist, the creator of the very popular S-Cubed sight singing program, and a choral director for more than 20 years, and one of my favorite people. Let's dive in.
My name is Dale Duncan, and I've taught middle school chorus for 27 years. I'm about to start year 28. I did do 1 year in high school, but it was not for me. The middle school was definitely my jam, but in the beginning it was not. And I failed miserably over and over and over again, and almost left the classroom At probably, well, the first year many times, and still was in doubt even until the third year. Around the fourth year, it changed. I don't know. I saw some teachers teach. I saw what was possible. I started to understand what they needed to hear from me, what kind of structure they needed, and I started digging deep about how to give it to them. So that's sort of my story in a nutshell. And I have awful stories from the first few years. You want to hear some?
Um, sure. I think that would help us all feel better, knowing that you are such a master teacher and that you struggled from the beginning, like the rest of us.
I did. All right. So, first of all, I remember the first time I was teaching music, probably like in the first month or two of school, and I had taken the place of my cooperating teacher, who had moved on to become a principal. She was great, and I would call her every day because I was struggling so much, and I would tell her situations, and she would tell me everything she could, even while she had her first job pressures as well. So I was with her on the phone. Her name was Ms. Yoakley. She was great to me. And I had student taught with her, so we had this relationship. So one day I'm teaching music, and I'm terrible at teaching music at that time. I didn't understand how to get the music into these students. Like, they weren't great readers. They were pretty much all beginners. Ms. Yoakley was a master at teaching the music. I remember when I would watch her, I'm like, how does she do that? And I thought I knew how, but I just didn't, and I was failing. And so this child who had Ms. Yoakley the previous 2 years just yelled out in the middle of class, "You need to call Ms. Yoakley up and ask her how to do this." And I had just finished my 6th year of education, master's degree in education, without a clue about how to actually manage the classroom, teach music to this age group. It was absolutely awful. Fast forward 2 or 3 months. I don't want to scare the new teachers away, the first timers, but you can get through it, and we'll give you some solutions, hopefully, and some guidance soon. But fast forward 2 months, it was like the holiday concert, and the kids sounded terrible because I didn't know how to get a good sound out of them. But I was determined to give them this benchmark. It's important for them to have, for me to have this, this performance, so that I can assess what I'm doing and try to grow and get better, and they can feel whatever they're going to feel, the sense of failure or the sense of accomplishment. And I was giving instructions. The concert was to be the next day. I was telling them when to arrive and how to arrive, what to wear. And this child across the room talked all the way to the other side of the room to a child while I was teaching. And she said, "Are y'all coming?" And this was in the South, right? And the other child answered back, "No, I don't think so. Are you?" And this is all going on while I'm trying to give instructions. And these things were happening to me because I had created an environment where they didn't really respect me, because I wasn't really showing respect for them. I looked 12 years old. I was trying to be too hard on them. I was not listening to them, what they wanted, what they needed. One girl asked me during that first semester if we were going to sing a song called "Wintertime Aglow," which they loved. And I just decided I wasn't going to do that song because I was doing my own thing. And I said, she had asked me many times and I wouldn't give her an answer. And finally, one day she stood up in front of the class and she said, "Are we going to sing Wintertime Aglow?" And I said, "No, we're not," as weak as I could possibly say it. And she started yelling, "You're not fair. You're not fair." Just yelling. And the class was in complete disarray. It was awful. Within, fast forward toward the end of that first year, I still had not, I got better in second semester. I made some pacts with myself about how to relate to them. I tried to be, because I'm usually a very nice, funny person in real life, but I was trying to be this person I wasn't. And so I broke up a fight in the hallway, and on a Friday. The child was one of them was one of mine. She got suspended. She came back to school, and the following Friday, she apparently pooped on the floor in front of my door. And they didn't have cameras, but I put 2 and 2 together, and the custodian and I put 2 and 2 together with who was around my building on that Friday. And so it was there until that Monday. And that was really a moment of awakening. And I'm like, I got to go watch some good teachers. I started taking sick days occasionally. You can't do it often. to watch master teachers over the next couple of years so that I could just try to figure it out. So I'm hoping that others don't have these sorts of experiences, but like when we sit around and we talk about how, how great people look at us and they think we're so great at it. Well, I still have my days sometimes, but I have systems in place that work with this age group. And I am eager to help every new teacher that I can. And I guess the first word of wisdom I would give is just to go home and every day of your first year or whatever year, first year of middle school or whatever it is, and self-assess, ask yourself, what did you do today that worked so that you don't beat yourself up? What were the good moments? And then what did you do that didn't work? And then how could you have done it better? And if you don't know, then, maybe you have to watch some teachers, or maybe you have to get on Google and research and find some things that it's so easy to get information now. So those are some of the stories, and that is probably my first bit of advice for teachers who are just starting. I think the second bit of advice that I would share is that the first day of the school year is critical. That first 10 minutes of your class. I am in my room right now today. We start on August 5th, but I came in early, and I'm not spending all day here because I still have summer left, but I'm laying the groundwork to make sure that first day is going to be awesome. For those who aren't familiar with my work, I have a video on my YouTube channel called The First 10 Minutes of the First Day of School. Go look at it, because I take you into my classroom and you can see, I've set the classroom up so that the students will walk in the door. They're all nervous. They need structure. I play spa music for myself included. I have directions right as they enter the room on a big whiteboard, so they can't miss it, because they tend to travel in a school of fish, right? So especially sixth graders. So if one kid goes to the right, they're all going to go to the right, and they just follow. But I stand there and I greet them with a smile, and I point to that little whiteboard which says, look at the front board. And then they look at the front board, and it has a series of instructions that tells them what to do. One of those is to grab a little sheet of paper off. It's like a word find, a music word find. So they immediately have something to do. And I've already labeled all of their chairs in my classroom. I print out using Infinite Campus, which is our grading system, a set of labels. And I've already created my seating charts. I've got them all there on the seats with their names, first and last. I tell them on the front board, it says, look for your name on a seat, sit down, begin the word find. I'll let you know when we're ready to start the next activity. They look, and I also write, if you don't find your name, then come to me. I create this sense of order from day one, that I am giving them the structure that they require. And then as soon as everything is situated, because it's crazy the first day, I tell them to put everything away under their chair, and then I begin singing right off. I play the game Forbidden Pattern, which is from my S-Cube sight singing program, because it's something fun, and I want them to sing. I'm not going to go over the rules the first day of class. That's death by talking, right? So I just do the game. I teach them the game without saying how to do it. I just do it. And then as we begin the game, I go through the point system just the way I will as we go through the year. And they have a great time. And hopefully when they leave on that first day, they can't wait to come back the second day, because we've already started with something like that. The end of class, when they leave, our desire is to have them want to come back, want to sing, want to talk about their favorite class of the day. Oh, it was chorus, and here's why. So then we go on to days 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are also critical, because you're laying the foundation through your daily procedures. You are, I make sure that every day there are instructions on that front board, so that I'm setting those patterns into motion. And then probably day 2, I play a game called Cup Up Game. You can do any game that is going to be unifying your students, giving them a sense of fun, doing games that help teach the lessons, like Cup Up Game. Again, it's on my YouTube channel. You can check it out. is a game in which we all have like plastic cups, and the job is to keep the cup in the air and get to 20, and you can't hit the cup twice. If the cup hits the ground, you have to start over by counting with 1. And so every time, like if I hit it first, I say 1. If the girl next to me hits it second, she says 2, and then we just go until 20. And then when they win, I give Starburst to the winning team. I've broken them into teams, obviously, and they're excited. And then we talk about the lessons of the game and how they apply to chorus. This is a great game. There's so many lessons. Like I even go into why we play another round, and I let them go as far as they can go. I just time it. I say for 2 minutes you go as far as you can go, and they'll get to like some group will get to like 45 or something. And we even talk about why, how does this game apply to chorus? Why did you let me limit you at 20? Because could you have gone further than 20, whatever the group was that won? We talk about don't let me limit you. Don't let any teacher limit you. I may think that you can only do X, but you believe you can do Y, then go for Y. Like just reach your potential. They usually say things like teamwork, is the first thing that comes out of their mouth with that game. But what we're doing in those, you can have the longest discussion you want to have. You're bonding with the kids, right? Usually by day 3, we're starting to do things like go over the syllabus a little bit, right? But not a lot. My syllabus is on my Teachers Pay Teachers store. It's it's free. Just go into Music in the Middle with Mr. D on Teachers Pay Teachers and search for my syllabus, and it's there. It's about 8 pages long. If I did it all in one day, if I went through all of those rules, I would be killing them and killing myself. Like it would just be, it's a terrible thing. Like when you're going through rules, you've got to keep it light, but you also have to, be very clear and look at the students, in the eye as you're saying the things. But then you have to actually follow through. Like, for example, we go over a bathroom rule, right? I say, you have to go to the restroom between classes. You have 5 minutes. You're not allowed to come in and drop your book bag and then walk back out the door. Once you're in my room, you're in my room, because I have 84 students in a classroom. If they're in some of the classes, if they're walking in and out, that's just chaos. Like it's so hard to get control of that. So you set the rule, you go over the rule at some point as you go over the syllabus. It takes me about 4 or 5 days to go through the complete syllabus. But let's say I went over it on day 3, that rule. And then on day 4, a child walks in and then puts the book bag down and turns around and goes back out. Then you, in your lightest, most fun way and with a smile on your face, you go, oh, no. Sorry, you had your 5 minutes, and you don't make it a thing. You don't humiliate the child. You enforce the rule, because you can go over rules until you're blue in the face. But if you don't follow through and go and do what you said you were going to do, then they learn that really quickly. And then you get into bad situations and your classroom management starts to fall apart. I have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So when the 6th graders come to me, I know that they are really important to my future, right? Because I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying at the school. Whatever I do with those 6th graders is going to stick with me for 3 years. One year I left. I went to Switzerland and I judged aerobic gymnastics for 1 year in Europe. And so I left this job, and we had another teacher in place. She's an excellent musician, but she had never done middle school. When I came back the following year, my kids that I didn't know were in 7th grade, and I worked harder that year. And this was when I was probably at about year 18 of teaching, fully seasoned. But I worked so hard that year getting the 6th graders, who are now 7th graders, into my corner. I mean, oh my God, it was like herding cats, They just were so used to having control of the room. And I had to do a lot of things to get it in check. And I'll go through some of this in a bit. But the 6th graders are really, really important, and once you set the patterns, they know when they come in 7th grade what it's all about. And then you have to continue to enforce. I want to talk really quickly about understanding your middle school students, because these are some things I did not understand at the beginning of my career. First of all, public recognition of positive behaviors goes so far. Calling out names of kids who are using great singing posture, throwing starbursts, which is one of the things I do. I don't do it every day. I don't even do it every week, but I'll throw a starburst once in a while. Like when I feel like if it's January and they've got the blues and somebody needs to be recognized, those children will like really pop up. They love to be publicly recognized and they love a starburst. I also have a sticker program that I use, which is public recognition. When my students walk into my classroom, every day they have their S-Cube sight singing warm up, most days anyway. And then they are working on it. So when they're working on it, I take stickers, little smiley faces like any other, elementary teacher would do. And I give them stickers. And not all of them. I just go and I get a chance to look at their work really briefly. And I'll get an interaction with them. I might ask them how their weekend was or whatever. And I tell them if they're on the right track or not on the right track, if they answer the question right or wrong, and I'll give the sticker. When they get 3 stickers, they get to come up to the starburst bucket and they take a starburst and they get, do it at the end of class. They love positive recognition. You praise in public, you correct in private. You get more bees with honey. Get them on your team. That's what I didn't know when I started. I did not have them on my team. They made my life miserable, and that's why I almost didn't make it in those first 3 years. They have so many fears. They are scared to sing alone. A lot of them, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them are scared to death of singing alone. So I don't make them sing alone. If they want to, I know with instrumental classes it's probably different, but singing is so personal. It comes out of your body. It is a part of who they are, and they're so awkward anyway. I mean, most adults won't even sing, in front of people. I try my best in my karaoke room to get people to sing, and it takes a couple glasses of wine and they're in. But like, you can't do that in middle school, so you just have to respect that they, have a hard time singing alone. So the raised hand, 6th grade problem. When you are not clear with your instructions, the hands go up. And the minute that the hands go up, you've missed something. And that can go on and on and on. And you're answering question after question after question. So only with experience can you learn, what you're missing in your instructions. A lot of teachers get really frustrated with children in middle school age because they are, like, why are they not doing what I asked them to do? Well, a lot of times it's because it's not clear. They didn't understand what you said. And then when the kids feel your frustration, then you start banging heads and it's not going to be a productive class. And then they're going to leave and they're not going to be happy and your program is going to get smaller or whatever. If you want to kill the spirit of your students, lecture. Now, once in a while, you have to lecture. I think I did it once last year to my 8th grade class. And the rest, no 7th grade lectures, no 6th grade lectures, lecturing about what you're supposed to do, right? This kills them. It really kills their soul. It kills their spirit. They tune out. They're so used to being lectured by so many teachers. And so it needs to be rare. And when you do it, it will be way more effective and you'll have way better results. One of the most common things that teachers, I hear all the time, they say to their middle school kids, I'm the teacher. You must respect me. This is also not effective with middle school. I believe firmly that respect is a circular situation. When I have a situation where a child, it's rare, but when a child does disrespect me, I am able to pull that child alone, one-on-one, because I'm not going to do this in front of his peers. And I get to ask the question, have I ever shown disrespect for you? And I know what the answer is. And the child will know what the answer is. And then you have them and you have their heart. And then they often will go straight to an apology because they know I've never done that. And that's not an easy thing to do, but you have to make sure you constantly are showing that respect. One other important piece of the puzzle, if you're a new teacher to middle school, is pacing. It's really difficult to learn, as I mentioned earlier, how to teach music to your middle school kids when they don't read very well. And, of course, you're teaching reading and it takes time. You can teach music in so many ways. That's a whole other seminar that we would have to do later. But, you have to be patient with yourself. You have to ask, how are they surviving my pacing? And you have to dig deep and learn over time and watch some master teachers online or whatever you need to do to get your pacing in check. So during those first 3 weeks, I'm covering the syllabus. I'm reinforcing with actions the things that I want to happen in the classroom, acknowledging the behaviors. I'm getting those the syllabi signed and returned, and then the honeymoon is going to end. It's about the end of the 3rd week. And then that's when the students who've come to school and they've said from the beginning, I'm going to have a great year. Then they start pushing the boundaries, pushing the buttons, and it's always going to happen. And again, it goes back to you being consistent, you enforcing the things. You have control of your classroom. This is your oasis. You get to do what you want, how you want it. When you pull out your folders, okay, this can be like for your music folders, right? This can be for middle school, a disastrous situation unless you set it up so that it isn't. Like I have, as I said, 84 students. The first day that we actually get into the folders, now in the first beginning of school, we're singing, we're doing rounds, we're learning about vocal warm-up as we're going through our syllabi and we're like mixing it up. So the class, we're doing 10 minutes of this, 10 minutes of that, blah, blah, blah. But when it's time to pull out the folders, you have to teach the process. What is it? Are they sharing folders with other students in class, in other classes? If so, what are you going to do to make sure the folders are in shape for the next class period? So here's what I do. I have, with such large numbers, I have 2 folder bins. I put my even folders on one wall, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. My odd numbered folders on the other wall, 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. And I have a color-coded document on the wall near the folders that says things like green. If you get a green mark on your name, it means your folder was not in alphabetical order when you returned it. If you have a red mark on your folder, it means you put the folder in the wrong way so that the music was facing out instead of the butt of the folder. And I make a joke about the butt and they love it. They laugh, but it makes the point, right? If you have another color, it's because you put it in the wrong slot. And then I pick student monitors, they stay the same pretty much for the whole year, who go over. I allow 5 to 7 minutes for the folder return, especially that first day. And then the monitor will check as I'm doing a review at the end of class so that the folders are in great shape and the kids are held accountable for what's happening in those folders. They randomly pull out a folder or two, look inside and see if the folder is in alphabetical order by song title. And then I have fun shaming the kids. Of course, I'm not really shaming because we always, as I said earlier, praise in public, correct in private. But on the first few days, if I see a folder turned the wrong way and the music is out instead of the butt of the folder, I'll go over to the folder and I'll point to folder 12 or whatever it was. And I'm like, oh my God, where's the butt? And then they laugh and they need you to be light. They need you to be fun. And then I'll flip it around and I'll go, who is it? Who is this person? Number 12. And then I'll walk really slowly over to the list of folder numbers that I've created on my Excel sheet. And I'll be like, Sarah, it's you. And then she'll come up and she'll go turn it around. So you have these types of relationships where you get them on your team and where they have a great time laughing at themselves for, they're just learning. We want to make it light. We want to make it fun. But we want to hold them accountable every single time. And I make it a part of their grade. I take the list off after about the 2nd week, once the processes are in place, and I make sure that they're held accountable. I dock their grade a little bit. It's in the syllabus, how much. One big thing that a lot of teachers struggle with in large classes is how to get them quiet. This is a big issue.
It's frequently asked, yeah.
Yes. What do we do when you have 80 or 100 or you're at a concert and you have 200? What do you do? Well, there are all kinds of things that people know, like, I never yell. I will, of course, some teachers use the, clap back. That works. It all works. Because I use solfege with my kids and I use a technique called follow the hand. that helps them learn to listen. I try to use, I'll do a do and I'll sing it do in their voices, and then I'll sign with the solfege signs, and they will sing it back. They sing the do back, and then they use their hands and they follow, and they know that that's how I get them quiet. It really doesn't matter what you do, but you just need to be consistent. I find that when I use follow the hand activity, which again is on my YouTube channel, you're just type it in. They are listening, they're correcting their vowels, and they're getting quiet. So it's good. I use it also at my concerts. There's a couple holiday concerts on my YouTube channel where you can see the beginning of the concert. And that's when I literally just walk in the door. I have all my students out on the floor already to reduce movement. Like I have so many, I have 4 choirs. I don't want people walking on and off the risers. It takes too much time. So I set them up. I have some on risers and some are on chairs, and then they will just stand from where they are. But when I walk in the door, I have 1,000 people in the audience. I have 300 kids in front of me. I just step onto my little podium. I put my hand out. I sing the do, and they sing it back. And a lot of the parents are like, that is the most fascinating thing. I'm like, they absolutely could decide not to do that. They have control over it. They really do. But they do it because I've created a situation where they like me. They want to cooperate with me. They know that I work hard and that I care about them. And that is why they come my way. Occasionally, you also need to stop and look at your talkers. Like now I've been talking, I don't know, for 30 minutes nonstop, and that can be a drone. On and on when it's not varied. And so when you're teaching and you're going and going and going and going, and you got some talkers, sometimes it's just good just to go quiet and stare at them. And then you don't have to say anything, and then they will look at you and then they stop, or a child next to them will poke them or whatever. But those are some of the techniques that I use in order to get my class quiet. So the next topic I want to touch on is how I handle chronic misbehaviors. And the mantra that I always use and that I encourage you to remember is that there is always a solution to the minor things that disrupt you. You don't have to tolerate any of it. So your job is to focus on that. And when you focus on that, you bring the solution into your world. So I'm going to tell you some of the ones that I have marched to that have worked for me. As I mentioned, we never publicly shame in a mean-spirited way. Always maintain their dignity. I use proximity with eye contact. Like I mentioned earlier, just stopping and looking. If I'm at the piano, I will walk over to the children, that need me nearby. And I'll just look at them as I'm even as I'm teaching, so that it's not an embarrassing thing for them, but they'll pick up on it most of the time. I use proximity with a quiet verbal instruction that very few children would hear. Like I'll say, buddy, stop talking. And then I'll keep going in my normal projected voice. And then buddy usually stops talking. Proximity with stay after class. So I'm near the child. Maybe I've tried some other things and it hasn't worked. And I'll quietly, without projecting my voice, say, please stay after and let's talk. And then, we'll talk, and I'll say, why do you think you're here? Tell me what you think I was trying to tell you. And then, when you speak with them this way, they really are great human beings. When you grind against them and you push them, and you embarrass them publicly, you don't get that same reaction. It's an atmosphere that you set up. When you talk to the child, you're creating a relationship, right? One-on-one discussion. You let them talk, and then you share what you needed to share. So it's a real conversation. You ask things like, shall I move your seat? Or you can let them suggest a solution. That's always good. So then you're just working with the child. You maybe make a note in your grade book if you have a digital one that you're doing that, but you don't need to make it a parental situation yet. You make sure you're clear to the child in this conversation, what will the next consequence be? So, buddy, if you continue talking, and you're not doing the work, you're not doing your written warm up or whatever it is that he's not doing, if you don't fix the problem, then I'm going to have to be in touch with mom and dad. Okay. And then they're like, oh, no, usually most of the time. And if they do continue, maybe they, just aren't able, right? They are young. Then you get with your parent notification. I set up my email list right at the start of the year. And now it's getting easier. It's digital. It's getting better and better. You can go straight through your grade books a lot of the times. But I set up a by class period. I put all of the parents' emails into. I'll put parent of Buddy Driscoll or whatever his name is, and then I can get to it really, really fast when I need to. So I'll pop in, let's say Buddy comes back and he's doing some things that are annoying, but not over the top, but I want to get it in check. Then I'm going to email the parent and I'm going to list as objectively as I can the behaviors. I'm not going to say things like, Buddy has a bad attitude. I'm going to say, if it were an attitude kind of situation, I would say, Buddy rolled his eyes when I asked him to sit up, specific behaviors that you're seeing that do indicate an attitude problem or a lack of respect or whatever it is you're trying to do, your objective. And then you say to the parent, you want to partner with them to help get him on track so that his grade stays high, and you appreciate any advice that they have. And almost all the time, you will get nothing but cooperation because of how you have approached the situation. If the behavior continues, you will do another parent notification, right? But this time you're going to come up with something like, I have something I call the daily agenda signing, which in our school we have, the students have to carry an agenda around. It has a calendar and this type of thing, and they can put their homework inside of it. It's very old school. I'm sure if it goes away, I'll find another way to do this. But I say to the parent, the behaviors are continuing, and here's what they are. His grade is now this, and I would like to do a daily agenda signing for 2 weeks. So every day, Buddy's going to come up to me, and I'm going to give him a rating from 1 to 5. You can do whatever you want, but 5 is he was the best in the world today, and 1 is the worst in the world today. And then you can write like really quickly 1 or 2 little notes about why. Now the kids love that instant feedback. And almost always they want 5s. And so you tell the parent that every day Buddy has to bring it to you. You have to read it and you have to initial it. And then you send it back. And then you have some documentation going, which is good. Let's say the behavior continues. The behaviors continue. Then you're going to have that parent conference with the child in the room for at least part of it. And there might be some parts that you feel like that you should let the child not be in the room. But in that parent conference, you're going to be able to look the child in the eye and ask, because sometimes children tell parents things that are not true. And you get to ask the questions and address them and let the parent see the full situation. And most of the time, your parents are on your team, but they're not always on your team. If a parent comes into the conference riled up, and feeling and believing what their child has said, you have to very carefully tiptoe through that tulip patch and just stay objective. If you feel like you're facing a situation like that, you should always have an administrator in the room with you. I always do that when I feel like it's a contentious situation. If the behaviors continue after that parent conference with the child, then you're going to go and write up to administrators. We never go straight to administrators first. Unless it's like a fight or something, or a child stands up and says, F you or something, then you have to do that. But it's hopefully you're not creating a situation where a child would want to do that, right? By creating great relationships with those children. When the child is continuing to be a problem, you've written it up, you've done your parent things, most music classes are elective. And so maybe it's that the child doesn't really want to be in your class. And that's when I begin asking those questions and creating opportunities for them outside of the chorus realm. I'll suggest it to the parent. And I guess some people would say I'm kicking them out. That is not what I'm doing. If the child really wants to be there, then I lay it on the line. Like, I am going to fail you until you fix these behaviors, until you do better, and because your behaviors are causing you not to do well in this class. So let's move towards failure. Okay, sometimes the only time people wake up is when they have failed, right? We all know that. It applies to adults, kids, everything in between. It's a wake-up call when we fail. And the reason is, I believe, is that people change when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. So that's why I say there's always a solution, and you have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until you get it, because this is your classroom. You know how you want it to look. You know how you want it to sound. You know how you want it to run, and you can make that happen. Some students need to fail, but we must not make it individually public. So I have this 4.5-week report card strategy, because at my school, kids get official report cards every 9 weeks. And at the 4.5-week mark, they get it's a little progress report, has a grade on it, but it doesn't count towards like honor roll or any of that. It's an important piece of information because while most children these days are checking their grades regularly online, and many of them have notifications on their phones because they care about it so much, not all of them do that. Not all of them have that ability. Some of the children who are less well off don't even have phones, or computers at their homes. So the 4.5-week strategy still is very effective. And what it is I will make sure that I have really gotten a good assessment, weekly assessments that I enter into my gradebook with their grades that reflect truly what they're doing, based on my syllabus and how I grade them with their daily grades. Because some children only think about their test grades, and some children ace every single test because they're really smart, but they're not doing great in their daily work. They're not using good singing posture. They're not contributing, to the singing the way that they should. They're kind of doing a halfway job. Then their daily grades need to be low enough in order to demonstrate, because this might be a straight A student in other classes or whatever. So suddenly they pop up with a 75 and they're like, what? If they haven't been checking their grades. And then they will come to me and I'll say, well, if you checked your grades in the Infinite Campus, you'll see the notes that I put. And then they start to wake up. That's part of their wake up call. And if they need a 65, then that's got, through those daily grades, you make sure that you're making that happen so that they get that wake up. Then they have a second chance, right? Because they have 4 more weeks to pull it up together, and you'll see a big change in a lot of children when you do that. A lot of what we do in our classroom is subjective grading. And so you have to also have some objective grading tools that are very clear. So when a parent comes into a conference, you're able to do things like my children keep a written warm-up folder, okay? And nowadays we're moving more towards computers and things and keeping things online. But at the moment, I'm still using the paper folder. They have to do their written warm-ups. You have to put them inside the warm-ups. Those folders are an objective grading tool. They speak volumes about the quality of a child's work. So when you have a parent in a conference with a child who the parent is not believing the child is doing these things that you're telling them, then you can pull out a folder and say, well, here, look, this is what the folder is supposed to look like. And you pull out a child's folder who's doing everything they're supposed to do. This is what your child's folder looks like. And this is because he's not completing the work that we're doing in class that is written. And then I have another objective strategy, objective grading tool called Music Prodigy. My students have to sing into their Google Chromebooks some sight singing examples, and it tells you when they've done it. It tells you how long they spent on it. That's a great objective grading tool that there is no denying. And when you have a parent who is not believing you, then these are some great things, in order to get them to wake up. The parental response that you receive or that you don't receive speaks loudly, and you have to listen to it, because when they're on your team, you want to keep them on your team. And when they're not on your team, you still have to keep your classroom the way that you want it to be. So I see parents, there are 2 types of parents, right? In my view, the parents that we love, who the minute you're in touch with them about their child not meeting expectations, they say, Mr. Duncan, you'll never have this problem again. then I know that I won't. I know that that child is, that parent has control of that child, right? And then you have the parents we don't love, and they are always the excuse makers. They're the ones who are going to have every excuse under the sun for their child. These are the ones you have to be extra prepared for in order to keep your classroom the way that you want it. So when I handle the excuse maker, I reiterate to you, as I said earlier, state your case without judgment, like a lawyer, but with compassion. Start with something positive, because this is their child, and there is always something positive. Always, always there is. So find it and say it, and let the child hear it if you're in a conference, for example. Because that child in middle school children will say, she doesn't like me, or he doesn't like me. And then it's all no longer their fault, because it's your fault because you don't like the child. And what do you say to that? You say, it's not about liking you, it's about liking the behaviors. It has nothing to do with liking you. We all probably have said that many times if we've taught for more than 3 years. In that excuse maker session, you're stating a list of observable behaviors objectively. You have a printout of your grades. You show them the child's folder, if you have it, or any other objective means of showing the work that they're not doing. You print any other data that shows that behavior pattern clearly. And you always have another teacher or administrator in the room, always. It takes persistence and it takes daily practice, right? Because everybody knows what's going on in your classroom, because parents and teachers and administrators talk. And you want to make sure that you're running a situation where people are saying positive things. And I want to kind of like start to close this out with this quote from Rita Pearson. She did a TED Talk. She said, kids don't learn from people they don't like. And that was the lesson that I learned when I began, and I struggled because I was a person that they did not like. So I have many materials that are free in my TPT store, on my YouTube channel. I have classroom management videos. On my blog, in the middle with Mr. D1.blogspot.com, I have classroom management things I've written. So there's a lot out there from me, and there's a lot out there from others. And I just want to make sure that you go and that you find it. And you can email me at inthemiddlewithmrd@gmail.com anytime, and I'll do my best, because I wish when I started that I had the tools that are at the fingertips of everybody. Don't you?
Oh, yeah, 1,000 times, 1,000 times over. I wish I had this. And I wish I had reminders of it halfway through the year, too.
Yeah.
And I will have links to all of your stuff and everything that you've mentioned in the show notes as well for this episode. So can I ask you some questions?
Please.
All right. Question number 1. You mentioned in your syllabus you have class rules. How do you come up with your class rules? If I've never had a classroom before, I don't know what to expect. How do I develop those class rules, and what are your consequences that go along with them?
Well, first of all, you have to imagine the room that you want and how you want it to run, right? You can certainly use my syllabus as a starting point, and I change my rules. Like when I've moved from one classroom to another, I'll change the rules a little bit because of the flow of the classroom. Like you have to think about those things. The consequences in the beginning are, if they're not following them, really, I'm just, like I mentioned earlier about the folders, I'm trying to make light of things, right? In the beginning, and I try to make a point of it in public. If the child asks to go to the bathroom after they put their book back down, I'll go, oh my God, she just asked, I'll do something over the top and crazy. She just asked to go to the bathroom. What's the rule? Like things that really reinforce in the early days. And the consequences are, as I've mentioned earlier, like if these are part of the chronic behaviors, the little things, and I kind of went through what to do. You always start with the student one-on-one, and you talk with them. And why are we having this conversation? Why do you think I brought you over here? Because you've done these things, right? And then you go to the parent, and then you go to the, you do parent email, you do parent conference, and then you go to the administrators. That's my system. And it works every time. But I also work really hard to recognize when I feel it, like when I feel things happening in the room, I recognize the children that are doing the right thing. And then the other children they want to please, and they'll look at her and they'll go, oh, okay. And then they start to do whatever it is that she's doing. These are the best ways, getting them on your team. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but
No, you really did. And that your syllabus link will be in the show notes, which is
Mhm.
super awesome. Do you give them like a warning first, or do you pull them aside first? Because I know
Well,
in my classroom, kids they sometimes just don't think. They just forget. They
yeah.
just blurt out.
Yeah, I try not to like do an official warning in front of people. Um, I use like I will call on the child, like if they're answering questions and a child blurts out, right, like you mentioned, I don't even acknowledge that child, like that blurted. I will not acknowledge. I'll acknowledge the child who raised their hand quietly, and I might even say, "Look at Sarah. She raised her hand quietly. That's the way I love it." And what's the answer? Because that way you're not having to. You're reinforcing what you want instead of what you don't want.
Right. That is so hard because we are so trained and ingrained to focus on the things that we want to change.
Right.
And yeah, so I think that takes so much practice.
It does.
So let's say that I'm starting my new classroom, or I'm wanting to revamp my classroom. Do I start with the stuff the first day? Do I come up with class rules first? Do you have class rules posted? Kind of walk me through the foundational things I have to do before that first day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's never a bad idea to have rules up in your classroom. That can't hurt. But my classroom, I don't have any rules up. I really do it through actually letting it happen. People learn by doing, right? So I set up the classroom so that it flows a certain way. I teach the processes. I teach that every day. Just by putting it on the board and putting a big whiteboard in front of the door that they come into, look at the front board, complete the activity. From day one, I'm setting up those procedures. And then there is a point in that first couple of weeks when I'm going over the syllabus when I say, you've already noticed what the daily procedures are, but they're written here in the syllabus. I'll go through them really quickly. Does that reflect what you've been doing for 2 weeks? Yes, it does, Mr. Duncan. Okay. So, they learn by doing. When you come into your classroom days 1, 2, 3, 4, and you immediately go through the syllabus, it's just a soul killer for this age group. So you have to take them through
for any age group, quite honestly.
Right.
If you want that buy-in right from the beginning, you've got to get them making music from day one.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So how do we decide on those kinds of procedural things, the flow of the classroom, if we've never been in that classroom before?
Right. Well, it's trial and error, right? If you're a first-time teacher and you're in a classroom, in a building that you're not familiar with the procedures, those are the most stressful situations, right? You're facing your first year and a new building and a new classroom. And it's really trial by error, right? You do something, it doesn't work. You don't beat yourself up. You go home, you self-assess, and then you come back and just be a human being with them, right? Like, okay, everybody is my first year teacher. I told you to do this. It didn't work. This is not the way it's going to be. Let's try this, and just be a human being, because then you're still, they're going to recognize the chaos, right? That ensued because you didn't do, something you thought was going to work, didn't work. But then you just be a human being, and then you're going to have them on your team. They're going to like you because you are respecting them, right? And you're showing that you're human. They love it when we show our humanity. They need it.
So speaking of that, let's say that we feel like we start the school year off really well, following through with the consequences, staying strict with our syllabus and procedures and everything. But as we get more into repertoire and then, our performances get closer, maybe we slack off a little bit and we get pretty far into the school year and realize that we've let some of those things go. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to just admit that to the students and start over, or do we wait till the next school year, or how do we get back on track?
It's always okay, I think, to admit to your kids, that you've let it go. It's like, and it's again, it's you're being a human. Like, I got so focused on this, and I just wasn't. And so let's just regroup and start from here. And sometimes January is a good spot to do that. And sometimes it can't wait till January. You have to do it earlier, but you also have to like around holiday time, the kids are crazy, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to allow them to be humans and them to be a little crazy, and kind of find ways to work with that crazy so that it's not always, bump, so structured, you can let go of it sometimes, but you have to establish it. Like right now, last year I did the same thing, but I'm having a rotator cuff surgery again on my other shoulder. I did it last year, and everybody said, why didn't you do it in the summer? Because I have to be out for like a couple of weeks. And I said, well, I didn't want to come into this school, because it's a major surgery, weakened, to start the school right off. I wanted to be strong. Like, it's strong. I mean, I've dealt with this for years. So what do? I'm coming to school for 4 straight weeks so that I can set the patterns into place. And then I've got all my sub plans, and I've got a good sub and whatever. And then I can leave for those 2 weeks knowing that they know what I expect because they've been in there for 4 weeks. We've already made great progress. And I can come back in a weakened state, but they've seen me strong, right? So that's why I'm making that choice, because those first 3 to 4 weeks are really critical. And you get to know your kids, you've set your procedures, and they're working. They know what to do. To come into the beginning of the school year, which sometimes is unavoidable, if you're in an accident, or if you've just had a baby, and you start the school year and a sub starts it for you, it's really hard to get away from behind that 8 ball, right? It's not easy. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I've seen some of my friends have to do that as well. They have a sub that first, quarter of the school year, and Ooh. Those students sometimes are very new to them, new to their class. It's a struggle.
Yeah.
So speaking of students being new to your class, you were saying in the first 10 minutes, they come in and they find their name on the chair. How do you set that up? Like, because I'm sure you have more classes. If you have 7 classes and only a 5-minute transition between each, do you have all 7 kids' names on the chair, or how do you do that logistically?
Yeah. So what I do in that final, like the Friday before the Monday that they start, because that, the rosters are always changing. Kids are enrolling and unenrolling and blah, blah, blah. So I just print out what's there that morning on that Friday. And I have different colors for each class period, and I put that on my front board. Second period's yellow, third period's red, because there's a lot of names and a lot of kids with the same names. And then some kids will get it wrong, and they're searching. And I have a little instruction, like, if you can't find your name, come to me. And I have my seating chart already ready. And I'm like, that's where you go. And because they're nervous and you're showing compassion and you're not yelling at them from the start. But most of them realize where they're supposed to go, and they can figure it out pretty quickly. And I leave those names on there for, I'd say, 2 weeks, because there's, a lot to remember. They're getting so much information and so many classes, and it's a big class, up to 84, as I mentioned. So I leave it on, and then they take it off, and I'm like, I have row of 18 chairs. I'm like, you need to count from the left. If you're near the left, you're the 5th chair in. So tomorrow you can find it. Keeping those sorts of structure, I make sure every single day that a chair hasn't been moved, before class starts, before the school day starts, because sometimes they do. A kid will move a chair for some reason, and there's 17 chairs. And then you have 84 kids come in a room, and there's 1 chair missing. And then you've started this sort of chaotic beginning. Where's the chair? My chair's missing. So I'm constantly making sure I'm on top of that structure.
So I've never had that ability to have all the chairs set up the whole time. For example, this last school year, I had, kindergarten through 4th grade, 2 classes of each. And then I had a beginning band that was 51 kids. And then I had a 6th grade band that was like 37 kids. And then a combined 7th and 8th grade band. So every class was a different configuration, almost exactly. So one of the things I did for the younger students who just used chairs, or often we just sat on the floor in a circle, is I wrote their name on just like 3x5 cards. You can get them at Walmart for 50 cents right now. And I'd write every kid's name, and then I'd lay them out on the chair. And
Hmm.
so when they'd come in, they'd find their name,
Yeah.
and then I would have them put it in front of them, and that helped me learn their name, or at least be reminded of their name if
Yeah.
they'd already been in my class before. And then with the band kids, I there's actually a website where you can create a seating chart,
Oh, well.
and I would just project it on the wall.
Okay. That's a good plan.
And so, I mean, I love your idea of, and if your classroom can be stable like that, I love that, especially that it's color coordinated.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be because there's so many, right? So many different classes and same names,
Yeah,
even if you're the same
totally.
person last. When you have 300, it happens. So,
Yeah, and I had three Kylies in a class, and each
yeah.
one spelled it differently. Or
Yeah.
Riley, Riley,
Right.
Ryle,
Yep.
Riley.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, having first and last. But I do love having their names there because it makes them feel like they belong. I think if they come into a room without any names, without any indication that that's where they belong, there's always that little feeling of insecurity.
Yes, 100%. And it just adds to what they're already feeling, like the eighth graders are ready to be seniors, and they're ready to see their friends, and they're going to want to socialize. This is a place they're familiar with. And so I let that happen a little bit, but then I say hello because I want to re-greet them and whatever. But the sixth graders, opposite end, completely scared. I have them at the end of the day. Some of them they've been at such a high stress level that some of them walk into my room in tears, and you have to show that compassion, see them in the eyes, and ask, have you had a rough day, or what happened, or like at the end of the day when it's time for the buses, because we have buses, and they don't know what bus number they had, they don't remember, they need our compassion. It takes a lot, but it goes a long way, and they realize that we care about them and that we love them and want them to be good and have a good day. Seventh graders, different ball of wax. They think they know everything because they were here one year. And so a lot of times I will have to really clamp down on some seventh graders pretty early in that first 3 weeks and get them in check. But yeah, so
Yeah, but I love that you use the word compassion though, because that's really what it comes down to.
yeah,
That kid's not crying because of you.
right.
The frustration isn't necessarily always happening because of you. It's not always about you. In fact, with students, 90% of the time, it's entirely about them.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think compassion is the smartest retention strategy that we
yeah,
have as music teachers. If we give
yeah,
them a really great time, they know that we care. This is their safe space. This is where they belong. They will come back to that
yeah.
space year after year after year.
Absolutely. It's a safe space where they can be happy and sing. Singing is, I know, instrument as well, but singing is so personal. And when they feel that sense of joy that you're bringing to the table, that sense of compassion, it makes them want to sing, because they have to want to sing, because I wrote a series of blog posts a few years ago called "Why Won't My Middle School Choir Sing?" And I really spent a lot of time on it, and I definitely think that people should read that, because they can just shut down, if you create the wrong environment, because singing is so personal. And I'm sure, I've never taught instruments, but I'm sure it's similar. They play less well, when you're not bringing some love and warmth and fun and happiness into the room. And we can't do it 100% of the time. We are human beings, but sometimes it's okay to just admit it, like, I'm not feeling this today. I'm just going to do the best I can. Let's do the best we can together. Anybody got a yo mama joke or something that
Dad jokes.
yeah, any kind of joke, something.
Yeah, I mean, did you hear the one about the 3 holes in the ground?
No.
Well.
Oh, see, they love that stuff. And then sometimes they
Awesome.
have stuff for us, right?
This Dale, Mr. D. I have a heart. Is it weird
Okay.
that I've known you as Mr. D for so long that it's weird to? Well, Dale, I am very, very glad to have you on again and to talk classroom management. This is just such an essential piece of what we do for not only our students learning all of their, loving educational abilities, but also for ourselves. and to make sure that we have a great experience too, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I appreciate greatly you having me on here. It's my mission and has been since I figured out how to share to help teachers with classroom management and with other things that I have enjoyed and learned and kind of mastered. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. And one more plug for the show notes. I'm going to have some great links to your S-Cube site singing stuff. And if you haven't already gone back, my amazing listeners, to listen to when we had Dale on before, it was, gosh, a little more than a year ago now, I think
that
we
was
talked.
March of this year. I don't even know. Or maybe it was March last year. I can't.
It was March last year. Anyway,
wow.
But we had you on to talk about sight singing and what an essential tool that is in, all of our K through 12 classrooms. So it's just wonderful to have you on again, and check out the show notes and check out everything that Dale's doing for you. He just gives and gives and gives and serves so much the music education community. And you're really one of my favorite people. You know that, right?
Thank you. Same here.
All right. Wow, right? So much good stuff in that episode, and all super practical. I worked through lots of rules and consequences and incentives for my music classes, and you know what I found? Exactly what Dale did, enforcing the procedures. Don't lecture. Get them making music and keep them making music. These are the most important actions for solid classroom management. Now, I wanted to make sure that you got all the good stuff that Dale offered to our International Music Education Summit attendees. So I went ahead and made his classroom management session accessible to everyone. You will find it at musiceducationsummit.org/MSCM. That's musiceducationsummit.com/MSCM. That's MSCM for Middle School Classroom Management. Now, this is normally something that people pay to watch, but like I said, it's really something Dale and I decided to offer to everybody as a special bonus at this time of year as you're just needing to get started in your classroom. I'll go ahead and drop the link to that freebie as well in the show notes on the Smart Music blog. Thank you again for joining me for this episode. Thank you so much for subscribing and for all your amazing 5-star reviews. Remember to check out the smartmusic.com blog and all of the awesome resources they have for you there. We'll be back in a couple weeks, and until then, keep teaching on.